Hey everybody, Charles for HumbleMechanic.com. Today, I'm going to be taking your questions on wheel fitment, stretch bolts, SKODAs, and more. This is episode 154 of the Humble Mechanic Podcast. All right, so this show is all about you guys. I'm taking your questions, and in order to get a question on a show like this, email me, charles@humblemechanic.com. Put question for Charles in the subject, ask your question right at the top, mash the enter button a few times, then give me the details. That really does help me out so much when getting your questions out of the email to put them on a show like this. Also, if you don't see your question on one of these kind of shows, be sure to check the quick videos playlist on YouTube. That's where I take my iPhone generally, answer one question, unedited, and upload it right to YouTube, special for you guys. And before we get into the show, let's talk about the sponsor of the day, which is CRP Automotive. CRP deals in a ton of OE maintenance and repair parts, timing belt kits, suspension components, and even fluids. In fact, they make the factory DSG fluid for Volkswagen and Audi. So check them out at crpautomotive.com. And one more quick thing, I have a handful of t-shirts left over from the order that we did. If you guys are interested in a Humble Mechanic t-shirt, not the shop shirts, post down in the comment section, let me know you're interested, and I'll let you know how to get one. All right, now let's get into the questions. First one comes from Garrick. Will the 17-inch Proto OEM wheels from my 04 Jetta wagon TDI fit on a 2015 Golf TDI? And would the 16s from the Golf fit on the wagon? I want to make sure they will both fit correctly and there will not be any drivability or safety issues associated with the swap. Love the show. Thanks, Garrick. Great question. So let's talk safety and drivability concerns first. All things being equal, if the tires are good and the wheels aren't bent and everything's cool with them, there won't be any drivability concerns. You'll be able to swap the wheels on off, no problem. This is a pretty easy swap, size-wise and offset-wise, because they're both built for basically the same vehicle. Here's the problem. The bolt pattern is different. On the older car, on the 04, the bolt pattern is 5-on-100. On the new one, it's 5-on-112. So the bolts are just a little bit further apart on the newer one than they are on the older one. But the good news, Garrick, is that there is a workaround for this. There are companies that make adapters, so you can go from a 5-on-100 hub to a 5-on-112 wheel. Here's the problem, right? There's always a solution and a problem associated with it. And this is not really a problem. This is just sort of a bump in the road, and information you need is that these are expensive. They're generally $100 to $150 per axle. So if we're doing this to 4 axles, that's gonna cost you, $600? That's a lot of money, but in order to swap wheels around for what it sounds like you might be trying to do, not a bad gig. Plus, that's pretty much cheaper than buying any new wheel and tire set. You can go to companies like Black Forest, ECS, I think 42 Draft sells them, and you can get them from those guys. They're all gonna be good quality from those folks. I might really kind of shy away from maybe the eBay ones or the really cheap Chinese ones. I'd be a little timid about that, because now remember, we're changing the offset of our wheel, because it's not like we're gonna bolt it straight to the hub, right? It goes hub, then adapter, then wheel. So we're spacing that out a little bit. You'll probably be okay. I've seen Mark V wheels on a handful of Mark IV Jettas. It fits fine with the adapters and no issues, even on cars that are lowered. So you can do it, totally doable, very cool thing to do. I love the idea of throughout generations swapping wheels around, but keeping a factory wheel. In fact, that's what I've been looking for on my GTI. Maybe a newer, updated wheel that looks different, but still fits the overall theme of a Mark III and looks good on a Mark III GTI. So awesome question, man. Totally doable. Just understand that it's going to cost you a few bucks in order to make it happen, but in the long run, that very, very well might be worth it. Oh, one other quick thing. They also make wobble bolts, which allow you to put a bolt in a wheel on a hub that's not exactly the same. I don't know if you can go from 5-on-110 to 5-on-112. That's a pretty far stretch. I think these might be meant for 5-on-112 to maybe 5-on-114. You'll have to do a little bit of research to find out if that'll work. It's not the best solution in my opinion. I'd rather, one, put the right size wheel on it, two, get the adapters, and that would be kind of a third tier solution. But it's definitely another one that I feel like it's worth mentioning. All right, next one comes from Chris. What bolts are needed when changing the timing belt and water pump on a 2008 Jetta 2.0 TDI? I have an '08 Jetta Wolfsburg and I'm about to replace the timing belt and water pump. I know that you need to replace the engine mounts and crank pulley bolts. What other stretch bolts have to be replaced when the service is performed? Chris, great question. Yes, the engine mount bolts are stretch to yield or torque to yield bolts, so they do need to be replaced. What a torque to yield bolt is, it means when you properly torque the bolt, it'll actually stretch out a little bit. So if the bolt is this big when it starts, maybe it's this big when you finish. It's usually not quite that much, but just for example's sake. Typically when you see a torque spec of a torque range, right, 50 Newton meters, and then you see an additional torque, say half a turn, that half a turn is where the bolt stretches. And a lot of times you can stand the bolts next to each other and see it. So yes, the two that go into the mount that's mounted to the engine and the three that go into the engine are all torque to yield. I don't think the ones that go from the mount to the body of the vehicle are torque to yield, but it's not going to hurt to replace them. Now, with the crank pulley bolts, I actually don't think those are torque to yield. I think those are just a straight torque. I will say, though, it is never a bad idea to replace those. I have seen so many of those bolts boogered up from people not putting the tool in the fastener all the way or using a ball end when they're trying to break it loose, or like a really crappy ball end, and just wallowing out the inside of that Allen. So be very careful with those. Make sure the bit is all the way in the fastener. Give it a little tap with a hammer if you need to make sure it's all the way in. I generally zip those off with an impact gun to avoid any damage, and I use really good quality Allens when I do that. So, and I never, ever break them loose with a ball end. You can break it loose with a flat end and then spin it out with a ball end, but please don't ever break it loose with a ball end. Other than that, it's really going to depend on how deep you're going to go into this job. So if we're just doing timing belt tensioners, water pump, rollers, that kind of stuff, I think you're probably good. If we decide we're going to do a crank seal or a cam seal, those bolts are also going to generally be torque to yield, so you're going to want to replace those as well. It's pretty much, I feel like you're not going to be able to over replace these bolts. Bolts are cheap. The timing belt job, you're already going to be in there. It's not going to hurt to replace maybe the bolts for the rollers. The tensioner rides on a stud, which I've never really seen an issue with. The water pump bolts, I've never really seen an issue with. But again, if you want to replace those, bolts are cheap compared to what the damage would be if one of those happened to back out. So don't worry about over replacing them. Also keep in mind that certain bolts are micro encapsulated, which basically is the repair manual's way of saying they have Loctite on them. If you have a bolt with Loctite on them, not a bad idea to replace it. Just make sure you replace it with one that has Loctite, that is micro encapsulated. If you don't have that option, make sure you clean all the old Loctite off the bolt and out of the hole for the bolt, and then apply new Loctite and torque it properly, and you shouldn't have any issues. But good looking out. That's why a lot of the timing belt kits come with bolts and whatnot, so that you can replace them as part of the job. So Chris, man, great question and good luck on your timing belt. All right, next one comes from Tim. I'm a new viewer to your YouTube show, and I'm really new to the world of VAG, or VAG, whatever you guys prefer to call it. I purchased a new SKODA Octavia RS almost 6 months ago, and I love it. I discovered that the engine, the EA888, used a plastic oil sump. My question is, can you recommend an aftermarket metal oil sump, as the idea of a plastic one really freaks me out? Also, I'm in Australia, not sure if that will help in regards to a local supplier. Tim, thank you for the email. This is, I think, the first question I've ever got on a SKODA, at least that I've picked up in the email stream. So this is really cool, and I'm pumped to answer the question. For those of you that don't know, SKODA is part of the Volkswagen Automotive group. They got a bunch of different cars. The car we're talking about is going to be very similar to the Golf family car, GTI, whatnot. So we're looking at the cars that have the plastic oil pan. The first time I saw this, I thought Volkswagen had lost their mind. Who puts plastic oil pans on cars, right? But here's the cool thing. out of all of the cars that have plastic pans, and all of them that we've serviced, I've had one broken oil pan. And this was clearly impact damage on a stock ride height car. And it wasn't just the pan that was damaged. There was damage, where like a rock, maybe like a big rock, bounced down the back to the back of the underneath of the car. So this car had pretty significant damage. I really feel like an aluminum pan probably would have also been damaged. A steel bottomed pan might have been okay, but the plastic one, needed to be replaced. And it was actually surprising at how well the plastic one, or the composite one, whatever you prefer to call it, really did hold up. It was a crack, but it wasn't a hole, so it didn't, catastrophic failure and lose all the oil out. It was a consistent, pretty solid leak, but it wasn't like someone punched a hole in the oil pan and it just was pouring or gushing out. It hit it right on one of the honeycombs. Those are meant to strengthen the pan, and it did exactly what it needed to do. So I think they're holding up way better than I ever anticipated. But that being said, I agree with you. It freaks me out a little bit too, especially if your car is lowered. If it's lowered, man, I'd put the steel skid plate on it and a metal pan most likely. I did a little research and found that USP does make them. The tricky part for you is going to be finding someone that ships to Australia. I'm sure you can make it happen, but boy, is it going to be expensive. But hey, it's going to be cheaper than replacing the engine due to catastrophic oil loss either way. I would also maybe ask the audience if you guys have seen of any of the other pans that bolt right up. There's not a ton of difference in engine blocks between our cars, right? The 4 cylinders are all very similar. You might be able to find an OE pan that bolts right up, that's the right depth, right? We don't want to have the pickup too high or too low in the pan. There's probably one of these OEM steel pans or aluminum pans that bolts right up. So that may be worth a little bit of research too. The research from my end on that car is a little bit limited, so I'm not 100% sure, but I would definitely look into that. Otherwise, the metal skid plate and avoid the situation altogether. Or companies like USP, they do make them. You may just have to reach out to them to see about shipping one to your location. So awesome question, man. Very cool to answer a question on a SKODA. Hopefully this helps some other folks out in the Volkswagen world. All right, got time for one more. This one comes from Tariq. How can a door lock actuator be removed if the door is stuck closed and double locked? Safe locked with the key, so both inside and outside door handles have no action on the actuator. You guys are gonna love this. This is a 2010 SKODA Octavia. We are in Australia, very similar to the VW Jetta and Passat, I assume. Thanks for the great videos. Love the show and nice beard. Thanks, Tariq. Tariq just got the beard trimmed, so appreciate the comments. Another SKODA question, right? I did not plan this. These were right in a row, which is ultra awesome. So we have a door that's stuck shut. The lock has failed. We can't open it from the outside, and the child lock is on, so we can't open it from the inside. For the most part, you can get these interior door trim panels off with the door shut. This is not fun. I typically like to take the back seat out so that I have a little bit more room. It's not easy to do. You have to really fiddle the tools around on the bottom in order to get any bottom fasteners out. And then you don't have a way to go up under and grab the door panel to pull it. So you got to use your trim tools, and you got to be careful because you don't want to scratch the door panel or bust the door panel or scratch any of the other interior parts of your car. Once you get that door panel off, typically you can get a screwdriver and manually actuate the release. I've had to go really deep on these at times where I've had to take the carrier out and reach my hand way in there. I've had to bust the locks apart in order to get them out sometimes. Sometimes you can get a screwdriver just right through one of the holes in the right spot and pop it loose, and everybody's happy. Other times you have to destroy the lock actuator in order to get it open. So hopefully you can get lucky. Look through all the little holes until you see where the release is, and usually you can just, with a long thin screwdriver, pop it and it'll pop open. Sometimes even just pulling the door panel off will help out too. But man, I've gotten in a bad way with these at times. If you're replacing the lock actuator, it's not a big deal. If you're just trying to get it open, take your time. Look really close, get an inspection mirror inside the door if you have to take the carrier out. You can usually find the piece that you're looking for in order to release that lock. This is one of those that it's really hard to explain how to do. You kind of just gotta do it and hope that you can find the release. So, man, I'm wishing you all the best. I've had this go really easy like that, and I've had to spend like an hour on one time after I got the door panel off, jerking around with the lock, trying to get it open. So, awesome question, man. Really good luck to you. And I would probably plan for having to maybe replace this at some point, replace the lock actuator at some point. I will say though, depending on how it failed, if like the handle doesn't pull right where the cable came off, you might have a little bit easier time where you can just take the carrier out, jam your hand up in there and pull it by hand, or maybe have someone fish a Slim Jim down and pull the cable up that way. Depending on how these locks are put together, since I've never worked on one, I'm not really sure. There's a couple options, man. Some are really easy, others not so much. So Tariq, man, good luck to you, and I appreciate the question from the other side of the world. All right, guys, I'm gonna wrap it up there. If you have any questions or comments, hey, you know what to do. If you like the video, throw it a thumbs up on YouTube. I really do always appreciate that. You guys can also subscribe on YouTube. The button is live wherever the button is. The subscribe button is live. Mash that button. Or on the blog at humblemechanic.com. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, the blog, and of course, on Snapchat. All right, guys, hey, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Drink of the day is water because it's hot as hell out here, and I'm trying to stay hydrated while I do the show for you guys. Also, this is the second time that I've done this show because the first time I was an idiot and didn't plug in the microphone.